Have you ever felt like no matter what you do, your own family still sees you as a burden? I have. Before I continue, please tap subscribe so you don't miss what happened next, because trust me, this story gets darker before it shines. My name is Sergeant Lily Carter, and before the world called me a hero, my family called me worthless. When I left for basic training at 19, my mother said, "Well, at least you'll be off our couch." My dad barely looked up from his beer. And my older sister? She posted a meme that said, "When you have a sibling with zero potential, send them to war." But I wasn't joining the military for approval. I did it to escape. I did it because I wanted to matter to anyone. Hi, and welcome to Courage Unscripted, where real stories leave you breathless. If you're someone who believes that even the broken can become brave, tap that subscribe button, because this is a story you'll never forget. Fort Leonard Wood, Missouri. The first 6 weeks of boot camp broke people. Some quit. Some cried. Me? I bled. I passed out during a live fire exercise and woke up with a busted lip and a sergeant yelling, "Carter, you think this is a daycare?" I was slower than the others, weaker at first, but I refused to go home. Not when they were waiting to say, "I told you so." I remember the call home after I earned my marksmanship badge. Mom, I qualified on my first try. Mom, what's that? Some kind of target practice? That's cute.
Cute.
They didn't come to my graduation.
Not one of them.
3 years later, Kandahar, Afghanistan. By then, I was Staff Sergeant Carter. Recon and response. My unit handled everything from IED sweeps to emergency extractions. In 2020, our convoy was ambushed outside a civilian checkpoint. The explosion flipped our lead Humvee. I was in the third vehicle. The smoke, the screams, the chaos. It still plays in my head every night. I jumped out, ignored protocol, and sprinted toward the flames. I pulled out Private Mendoza, both legs gone. Then I dragged Sergeant Fields, half his face melted. I could barely breathe, but I kept going. 6 men saved. 1 didn't make it. But 6 were alive because I didn't wait for permission. We weren't supposed to engage. I was reprimanded until HQ saw the footage. Then everything changed. Back home, I was still a nobody. Mom told people I was playing soldier. My dad joked, "She's just doing it for college." And my sister? Oh, she was too busy posting Instagram stories from Dubai, funded by her fiancé's trust fund. At a family gathering, my uncle asked, "So, when are you going to do something real with your life? Do you ever think of nursing school?" I laughed. Not because it was funny, because I realized I could survive Taliban fire, but I still couldn't survive Sunday dinner. Then came the day. The day I stopped being worthless. I was one of the 12 soldiers invited to a special Pentagon ceremony. We weren't told why. Just to dress in formal Class A. When I entered the briefing room, there he was, the commander-in-chief, flanked by generals, cameras, and the American flag. He looked at me, then pointed. "You saved more lives in one mission than most do in a career," he said. Silence. Then applause. He walked over, shook my hand, and said, "You didn't just serve your country. You defined it."
My ears rang.
My heart screamed. And for the first time in my life, I wasn't invisible. But you know what happened after that? My family's reaction? You'd expect pride. You'd expect tears of joy. Instead, they did something that hurt me more than all the years of insults combined. And I'll tell you in Chapter 2. Because what they said after I met the president, it broke me. Worse than war ever did. You'd think that after shaking hands with the commander-in-chief, being saluted by generals, and seeing my name flash across national news, my family would finally say, "We're proud of you." But when I called home that night, buzzing, trembling, still in my uniform, this is what I got.
Mom. Oh.
That's nice. You made the news.
Me.
I was honored at the Pentagon. Dad in the background. So, she didn't win anything though, right? No, congratulations. No, we watched you. Not even a well done. Instead, my sister posted a tweet that said, "Military types always crave validation. Just do your job and move on." It's not that deep. That tweet got 7,000 likes. Meanwhile, I was still in my hotel room, staring at the mirror, uniform still perfect, makeup untouched, wondering if they even watched the ceremony. They didn't. The next day, I got a call from the White House Correspondent's Office. They wanted me to record a message for Veterans Day to inspire young women to enlist. I hesitated. Not because I was nervous, but because in that moment, I realized I had spent my entire life trying to impress people who had already decided I was beneath them. I flew home on leave. The banner on the airport walkway read, "Welcome home, heroes." People clapped. A little girl gave me a flag she'd drawn in crayon. My own city made me feel more valued than my own mother. When I walked into my childhood home, suitcase still in hand, my mom didn't look up from her phone. My dad asked me to park my brother's car because you're good at following orders. And my sister? She hugged me like I was contagious. Then she said, "So, are you done playing G.I. Jane now?" I didn't answer. But I noticed something. My medals, my certificates, even the framed White House photo I mailed them 2 years ago were nowhere to be found. Hidden. Buried. Or maybe tossed. That night, I cried in my old room. Not because they didn't love me, but because I finally understood they never wanted to. 3 days later, an envelope changed everything. I was requested formally to lead a special humanitarian mission with NATO. My team would help evacuate war-torn villages in Eastern Europe. This wasn't just an assignment. It was legacy work. When I told my family over dinner, my sister rolled her eyes and said, "Why would they pick you?" I looked at her calmly and replied, "Because I save people, not just criticize them." Silence. That night, as I packed, my mother knocked once and came in. "I just want you to be careful. This sounds dangerous." I looked at her, really looked, and saw something I hadn't seen in years. Fear. She wasn't scared for me. She was scared that if I kept rising, the excuses they made to tear me down would crumble. My success exposed their failures. Then came a headline that changed our lives. NATO officer saves dozens in Ukrainian village airstrike. It was me. There were photos of me carrying children through rubble, leading villagers to safety, covered in ash but still standing. My name trended. CNN interviewed me. A retired general tweeted, "Sergeant Lily Carter represents the best of us. A true American hero." And still, no call from my family. Until the day I landed back in D.C. I was walking through arrivals when I heard a familiar voice scream, "Lily." It was my sister. Camera in hand. Makeup flawless. Phone already recording. She ran up to me like we'd been best friends since birth. "Can you say hi to my followers?" I told them my sister's famous now. I stared at her. Then I looked at the camera and said nothing. Just walked right past her. That moment, it went viral. Hashtag walked past fake love. 1.3 million views in under 24 hours. People started asking questions. And the truth about my family? Well, it wasn't long before it was exposed. Because what happened next would put my whole family, especially my sister, on public trial. And the nation was watching. It's funny how people who once ignored your achievements will sprint to your spotlight the moment the world starts clapping. After I walked past my sister at the airport and ignored her phone camera ambush, I thought it would die off as just another social moment. I was wrong. Within 2 days, my airport clip was stitched with reaction videos, motivational quotes, and a hashtag. Hashtag salute to Lily. Veterans started sharing their own stories of family neglect. Single moms, nurses, firefighters, so many people said, "They only love you when it makes them look good." I didn't say a word publicly. I didn't have to. The world did the talking for me. But my sister? She did what any clout-thirsty influencer would do. She uploaded a tell-all video. The truth about my sister the soldier. The thumbnail? A crying selfie. The title?
Drama.
The content? A mess. She claimed I was always jealous of her glamorous lifestyle. Said the military was my way of running away from responsibility. She even showed a photo of us as kids and said, "I always knew she'd be the black sheep." Within 24 hours, The comments section went nuclear. You're bitter. She risked her life and you're selling lies for clicks? She saved lives and all you saved was a discount code. She deleted the video, but not before it was downloaded and reposted 1,000 times. My sister had started a fire she couldn't put out. And just when I thought things couldn't get more surreal, I received an email from a producer at a national talk show. Lily, we would be honored to feature you in a special segment called Unsung Heroes. I agreed, reluctantly. I didn't want revenge. I wanted peace. But life had different plans. Day of the show. They brought my mom and sister in as a surprise. I didn't panic. I just sat there, in uniform, medals glinting under the studio lights. The host turned to me and asked, Lily, if your family were watching right now, what would you say to them? I paused, looked directly into the camera, then said, I would say, thank you. My sister's jaw dropped. Thank you. I continued, for never clapping, for never encouraging, for doubting me so loudly I had no choice but to prove the world wrong. The audience fell silent. I turned to the host and said, they didn't raise a soldier. Their rejection did. After that episode aired, my inbox exploded. Speaking requests, sponsorship offers, letters from young girls saying they finally believed in themselves. Even high schools started requesting my speech, titled, Worthless to Warrior. But you want to know the real twist? My sister tried to sue the show, claiming emotional distress. It was dismissed in minutes. Because in the eyes of the world, she wasn't a victim. She was a symbol of every person who tried to downplay greatness because they couldn't find their own. A month later, I was invited to the Women of Valor Gala in New York. I sat beside senators, CEOs, and Medal of Honor recipients. When I went up to speak, I said, some families are built by blood. Others are built by battle. I may not have had both, but I chose my tribe. The applause echoed for minutes. But the real shock came backstage. A man in a dark suit approached me and handed me a card. We've been watching you, Sergeant. The nation needs more of your voice. On the inside, Homeland Security would like to offer you a liaison role. Interested? I stared at him, stunned. I was no longer just a soldier. I was becoming a symbol. And as I stood there, I realized something I never imagined. My family called me worthless, but they handed me the fuel. And now the whole country was watching. But my biggest choice was still ahead. Because the next move I made would determine whether I stayed in their shadow or built a legacy that no insult could ever shake. The opportunity with Homeland Security wasn't just a promotion, it was a seismic shift. I wasn't just protecting my country on foreign soil anymore. I was shaping policy at home. For the first time, I had a desk,
A badge.
a voice at the table. I was the youngest female liaison ever appointed to the Homeland Civil Resilience Initiative. And that scared people. Not the ones above me, but the ones who'd been waiting for a chance like this their whole lives, only to watch me walk in and take it. They smiled in meetings, clapped in public, but in private, they were sharpening knives. It started with whispers. Did you hear she only got the role because of the Pentagon stunt? She's riding the media wave. She's not qualified. She's a poster girl. And then, one morning, an email hit my inbox. Subject line: Internal review. Unauthorized media disclosure. I froze. Inside was a screenshot of an old private message, one I sent to a fellow vet during my Kandahar recovery. I'd said something raw, human. I was venting. Sometimes I feel like they only care when the cameras are on. The rest of the time, they'd let us rot in sandbags. It wasn't classified. It wasn't untrue. But it was fuel. Someone had dug it up, flagged it, and attached it to a memo questioning my loyalty. Just like that, I was under investigation. For weeks, my life stalled. They froze my assignments, pulled me from briefings, treated me like a virus in their system. The same headlines that once called me America's hero were now reduced to soldier turned spokeswoman under scrutiny. Even my friends at the agency began to disappear. No one wanted to be caught standing beside a woman with a target on her back. I came home one night, threw my uniform onto the floor, and sat in silence. Was this all it took? One line, one moment of vulnerability, and they'd rather silence me than ask if I was okay? Then I got a call. Not from Homeland, not from any journalist, but from the Commander-in-Chief's press secretary. He said, "Ma'am, he'd like to see you. Privately." I thought I was about to be asked to resign. Instead, I walked into a quiet room in the East Wing. The president looked up from a file. My file. He closed it.
Stood.
"You said something honest in a moment of pain," he said. "That's not a betrayal. That's the kind of truth this country buries too often." He offered me a chair. Then he offered me something else. A second chance, but on my terms. He asked if I'd consider taking a role in a new initiative, a veteran-led reform task force aimed at mental health, support, and reintegration. It would mean stepping away from Homeland Security. Less power. More truth. I didn't hesitate. "Yes," I said. My resignation from Homeland made headlines. Some spun it as a fall from grace. Others called it strategic repositioning. But I didn't care, because 1 month later, I stood on stage in front of Congress and said, "Our wounds may not always bleed, but they are real. We cannot send our soldiers to war, then shame them for having scars." That speech went viral.
But more importantly, it reached the people it needed to.
Veterans wrote to me in thousands. Mothers. Widows. Even teenagers saying they finally saw a path forward. I wasn't just surviving the system. I was redesigning it. And my family? They went silent again. Not out of shame, but out of fear. Because they knew now that even without their praise, I had risen too high for their ridicule to touch. But as much as I wanted to move forward, the next chapter in my life would drag me straight into the one place I had been avoiding all along. Home. Because the woman I had once called my mother? She was about to be exposed in a scandal that would put everything I'd fought for at risk. And this time, I wasn't just fighting for myself. I was fighting to protect the very people she tried to destroy. I hadn't spoken to my mother in over a year. Not since the night she stood in my old bedroom doorway and told me she was glad I had found something that made me feel important. As if rescuing villagers under artillery fire was just a therapy hobby. I ignored her ever since. No birthday cards. No check-in calls. Nothing. But life has a way of bringing you back to places you try to forget. It started with a phone call I almost didn't answer. "Sergeant Carter? This is Detective Malone with the Financial Crimes Division. We need to ask you a few questions about your mother." My stomach turned. "What kind of questions?" He paused. "Do you know anything about a veterans nonprofit your mother helped register?" My heart sank. The one she told me she was just helping a friend set up. The one that had my name on the board of directors. Without my knowledge. Within 24 hours, I was sitting in an air-conditioned interrogation room as 2 investigators laid out a stack of papers thicker than a deployment binder. Wire transfers. Grant applications. Ghost receipts. Over $350,000 in government funds intended for disabled veterans gone. And all under the nonprofit's name. Carter's Hope Foundation. Named after me. I gripped the edge of the table. "You're saying she used me?" "Used my name to defraud the government." One agent nodded. The other spoke gently. "We believe you're not involved. But it would help if you were willing to testify." I didn't sleep that night. I stared at the ceiling and wondered if all this time, she really did see me as worthless. Not just emotionally, but as a tool. A stepping stone. She had never been proud of my medals. But she saw their value in her bank account. The woman who refused to watch me receive a presidential handshake had been using my name to siphon government aid from real veterans. And I couldn't stay silent. The press caught wind fast. They used every headline they could twist. "War hero's mother behind veteran fraud ring." Sergeant Carter breaks silence. I had no idea. From Medal of Honor to courtroom drama. Everywhere I went, cameras followed. But I didn't flinch. Because I was done shielding people who never protected me. The day I took the witness stand was the coldest day of that year. I walked into the courtroom in uniform. Not for theatrics. For truth. I needed the jury to see the contrast. A woman who bled for her country, now holding the one who gave birth to her accountable. My mother sat there in a gray sweater, eyes hollow, hands trembling slightly. But when she saw me, she smiled, as if it was still some game, as if she still believed I wouldn't go through with it. I looked her straight in the eye and said, "My name was used without my consent. I have served this country with honor, and what she did dishonors everything I ever stood for."
That's not family.
That's betrayal. She didn't smile after that. She was convicted on 6 counts of wire fraud and sentenced to 5 years. I didn't attend sentencing, but I visited her once, 6 months into her term. Not out of pity, out of closure. She sat across from me in a plastic chair, face weathered, the smugness gone. "You could have walked away," she said. Kept quiet. Saved face. I replied, "You taught me silence. The military taught me accountability." She looked away, and that was the last time I saw her. I left that facility lighter, not because justice had been served, but because I had finally buried the ghost of a daughter who kept begging for love from someone incapable of giving it. That year, I received an award from the National Integrity Alliance, not for combat, not for saving lives, but for upholding truth under fire.
Funny, isn't it?
The world once called me a soldier. Now they called me a protector of the people, even from those closest to me. But one thing remained unsolved. One person had stayed quiet through it all. My father. And when I found out what he had been hiding, it changed everything I thought I knew about my family, my childhood, and even my enlistment. What he did, that nearly destroyed me. After the trial, after the interviews, after the cameras faded, and the public turned its attention to the next scandal, I was left with one last loose end. My father. The man who never raised his voice, never showed emotion, and never, not once, told me he was proud. I hadn't seen him in nearly 3 years. But 2 months after my mother's conviction, I got a letter. Not an email, not a text, an envelope. Handwritten. "Lily, if you want to know the whole truth, meet me at the old cabin. Come alone." It was signed Dad. The old cabin sat 2 hours outside the city. A dusty family relic from when we used to pretend to be a normal American family. Fishing trips, roasting marshmallows, laughing while faking it. I hadn't been there since I was 15. When I arrived, he was already there, sitting on the porch, smoking the same cheap cigars I used to steal out of his drawer as a teenager. He looked older,
Gaunt.
weaker, but still stone-faced. I stood at the steps. "You wanted to talk?" I asked. He nodded, then reached beside his chair. He handed me a file folder. Inside were photocopied checks, emails, and a long letter dated 8 years ago, signed by him, co-signing the formation of Carter's Hope Foundation. My hands trembled. "You knew?" I asked. "All this time, you knew what Mom was doing?" He didn't answer right away. Then finally, "I signed the papers because she said it would make you look good, that it'd help your reputation." I stepped back. My voice cracked. "You let her commit fraud under my name to help my reputation?" He exhaled. "She said if you failed, at least the foundation would save face for the family." That moment crushed whatever was left of the daughter in me. All those years, the silence, the condescension, the casual dismissals, they weren't out of ignorance. They were a choice. He'd watched me struggle, watched me prove myself, while quietly playing defense for a lie they helped build, just in case I couldn't become something on my own. I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I stood and said the only thing I could muster. I bled for this country. I lost friends in war. And you sat on a porch watching my name be used like toilet paper just in case I couldn't make it. You were supposed to protect me. He didn't deny it. He didn't apologize. He just looked away. And I walked. That was the last time I saw my father. Weeks later, the truth came out. He cooperated with the authorities in exchange for immunity. I was cleared, publicly, completely. But by then I no longer needed their name. I had built my own. Today I no longer wear the uniform. Not because I left the mission, but because the mission evolved. I now lead a national nonprofit, Valor Forward, serving veterans, survivors of military abuse, and those silenced by their own families. I speak to cadets, lawmakers, school kids, not about war, but about worth. And every time someone asks, how did you survive everything they did to you? I tell them, I didn't survive despite my family. I survived because I refused to become them. If you take anything from my story, let it be this. Being called worthless doesn't make you worthless. Being doubted doesn't make you small. And being betrayed doesn't break you forever. Because sometimes what they call broken is just a hero in the making. And I am not just a soldier, not just a daughter, not just a survivor. I am Sergeant Lily Carter. And I saved more than lives. I saved myself.